Hey guys. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. Broken Plea, chapter 13. Sound is good? Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're talking about the DNA and how they got it. And Gamut says the DNA sample itself, that DNA sample was delivered by Moscow Police Department in person to them at Othram Labs. According to ISP Supplemental 56, Corporal Chad Williford transported that K-bar sheath from Moscow to the State Police Crime Lab in Meridian, Idaho on November 16th, 2022. On the chain of custody form, his last name is, for some reason, spelled Willer Fawn. And yesterday I said maybe it's his handwriting because what I've seen, it's handwritten. So maybe it's just written funny and it just looks like that. Or maybe he's like, doesn't want to put his real name on there. I don't know, but it's very close to his real name. I think it's just not being read correctly. However, okay. Taylor asks, did you have any role in that? I accompanied the officer from Boise down to Houston and down to the Othram laboratory. I didn't have possession of the sample, but I was with the investigator that did. The evidence was transported to Othram on November 22nd. And when were they notified to stop work? She asks. I believe the official notification was on December 10th, if I remember correctly. I think that they say things like, if I remember correctly, to save their own butts from perjury, I would. Like, I'm not sure, but this is what I think. The two talk back and forth about operational logistics and procedures using language of the trade like SMPs, STRs, and wet work, defined as anything that would be done in the physical laboratory. Excuse me. If you guys want to share the live, feel free. You can do that if you want and like it. I think that helps. It just the AI thing tells you what to say, so I thought I'd say it. So let's continue. So after that, they had a recommendation for you. Taylor asks, their recommendation, to my memory, to my recall, was that they had several individuals that had the potential to be of interest in this investigation. Several individuals. They asked us if, to further their family tree building, if we could be in contact with individuals and see if they were willing to contribute information into the database that they were using in order to further the family tree building and further the geological work. For the record, Gamut is telling Taylor that the Othram lab had identified several individuals based on DNA analysis of the K-bar sheath found in Mogan's room. Several individuals. And and we're in a closed setting here, so I'm going to ask you to give me the last name. I don't recall the last name, Gamut says. I'm sorry. Was it your understanding that these were four brothers? Yes. Okay, what the four brothers, DNA on the sheath, okay? Okay, what did you do in relationship to these four brothers? So we did some cursory work, just looking in publicly accessible information, literally Google searches and things of that nature. What our approach was is we didn't want to be approaching people, especially with an investigation of this nature that really had nothing to do with anything. How do you know? How do you know? It must be psychic. We just wanted to make sure there was some reason why Othram Laboratories was asking us to go and ask these individuals to put their DNA into the database that law enforcement can search. So we just did some work to build just very cursory family trees to see what connection these individuals might have and to verify these individuals were indeed brothers, things of that nature. Did you verify they were four brothers? Taylor asks. I don't know that we would use the word verify, but we believed that the information was reliable that they had given us based on the publicly accessible information. Now, I know you said you can't remember the last name of these brothers, Taylor says. We're here today, and Brian Koberger's name has been on the news for 2 years. You know his name. That wasn't the last name. That was not the last name, Gamut says. Taylor takes great pains to verify for the record that the first genetic profile developed by a state-contracted laboratory based on DNA found on the thumb snap of the K-bar sheath was not Brian Koberger's. She asks what happened next, and Gamut tells her they contacted one of the four brothers who said he wanted nothing to do with the investigation. Well, do you think Brian wanted anything to do with it? After that, things happened quickly. There was a meeting, to my knowledge, Gamut testifies, and I don't remember exactly when, but probably the morning of December 10th, we had a meeting, telephonic meeting is my memory, with representatives from Moscow Police Department. I believe FBI had representatives on the phone call, myself, ISP legal counsel, and I believe that the colonel of state police was on that phone call. What happened on that phone call? In that phone call, we were asked to turn over any kind of investigative records that we had, any kind of information that we had to the FBI team. They provided me with an email address to be able to provide what they were requesting from us, which was, to my memory, it was the login information essentially, and it might have been other things I'm not aware of, like packets and things. I'm not aware of the technical terms, but basically, they were asking us to provide that information to the FBI investigators. Taylor asks Gamut what they turned over, and he mentions database information. When you say two databases, do you mean two genetic genealogy databases that allow law enforcement search? Yes, Gamut affirms. To my knowledge, these samples were searched in two genealogical databases that allow searching by law enforcement, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. I believe were the two that were searched, and we were asked to provide those credentials, that information, to the FBI. Gamut confirms that Othram provided what is called a preliminary report, which contained no notes or work product, and they were then told to terminate the testing. It should be noted that law enforcement agencies may be given access to CODIS, but not private DNA databases. Why was the decision made for the FBI to take this over and not let Othram finish? I don't know, Gamut says. I can't speak to that. And this is where Ann Taylor's line of questioning moves from the ridiculous to the sublime. She had already secured sworn testimony from lay detective Brett Payne that the FBI never told him they found Brian Kohberger's DNA on the sheath. She has put former lab director Nowlin on the record stating that Othram was a state-approved vendor, and she has put Gamut on the record saying Othram obtained a profile from DNA found on the K-bar sheath and traced it to four brothers who were not named Kohberger. Oh, shoot, I just marked that out. She has established that virtually everything Latah County prosecuting attorney Bill Thompson has said about his only physical evidence is false. Should I highlight this? Okay, Taylor asks, did you ever take a look at the two profiles, the FBI's S&P profile and Othram's S&P profile? Have you ever looked at those? Did we look at those, or did I look at those? Did you? I did not. No, Gamut states. Have you seen them? No. Would it surprise you to know the FBI profile was over twice as big as Othram's? Again, I have no knowledge of what the FBI did or didn't do. Gamut answers, I had no knowledge of, or, yeah. It says, I had no knowledge, or ... yeah. One last thing before Lorenz's butterfly fully becomes a storm. Remember, Lorenz is the man who came up with the butterfly effect in the very beginning of the book. I agree. So, Lorenz is the one who came up with the butterfly effect, saying at the beginning of the book, the butterfly is flapping its wings. And the first false statement is what, thank you, whatever that was, thank you. It starts this whole thing. Homeland Security, yeah, why? Why? What was the point of that? Okay, let's keep going. Taylor has just documented that Thompson's Brady disclosure included almost no documentation of Othram's work. It did not mention the DNA profile they generated, the interview of the unidentified brothers, or the December 10th interagency phone call, which seems not to have been recorded or documented in written reports. That's insane. So this phone call they're talking about was not ever recorded. Any of the work that Othram did in getting the DNA sample all the way down to the SMP profile, where are they? Taylor asks. Where's the Where's the documentation of that? Gamet responds. I do not have that documentation. That was not provided to us, to my knowledge, and I don't know everything that was provided back to the laboratory potentially, but to my knowledge, we were not provided with that information. Would Othram have it? Potentially. I don't know. The work that they did to come up with a name to give you for further investigation, where are those documents? I don't know, he says. Nor does anyone else, it seems. Ann Taylor's office never received additional information about how DNA found on the K-bar sheath was initially used to identify 4 brothers whose names have been lost to history. All testimony recorded and transcribed in 175 pages of property filed by clerks was sealed from public scrutiny by Judge Hippler right before he denied the defense's plea to suppress. Wait. Oh, I don't know what you're doing, honey, but don't scam my people. I want to know who these 4 brothers are. Does anybody know? Do we know? I have an idea, but I don't want to say anything. Okay, we're on chapter 14 now. I'm going to do my best to read the rest of this, so it might be a long day. I'm so appreciative of you guys being here. And I just want to take a second to say thank you so much for joining me on these lives. I know I went a whole week without reading, and I apologize for that, but I'm here now, and we're going to finish this book. Gosh darn it, we're going to finish it, okay? And we're going to find answers, and we will find justice, okay? These 4 students will have justice in some sort of way. Even if they weren't nice, you know, if they were bullies or whatever we're hearing, it doesn't matter. They still deserve justice, right? Right. Okay, let's go. Chapter 14, Dark SUV, Loud Exhaust, 12 NGML. All right, let's go. I'm excited. They do. There is no way to Start over. There is no way to properly analyze this case without addressing the issue of how the killer actually got to and escaped from the house. Based on widely available door camera video, we all know about the white 4-door sedan police have identified as an Elantra and tied to Brian Kohberger. We know from this same video that DoorDash driver Molly McMichael was there as well. She can be seen walking up and down Queen Road with a flashlight just minutes before the crimes. And based on police reports, we know she claims a light-colored sedan drove next to her as she was walking. As Detective Payne wrote in LCPA Supplemental 157, documenting his November 23rd interview with McMichael, says, during the time McMichael was in the area of the King Road residence, the white Elantra can be seen via the 1112 King Road camera driving back and forth on Walenta Drive and then enter the King Road Queen Road loop at approximately 3:56 a.m. The DoorDash driver said she first parked behind the house, based on GPS, but then got out, walked around front, trying to verify the address. McMichael said she started to walk down the road, which runs north-south immediately to the east of the residence. McMichael stated a tan sedan drove next to her while she was walking. For some reason, police did not trust her recollection. At that point, McMichael pulled into the front parking lot before she dropped the order off. The Elantra pulled in behind McMichael's vehicle, a gray Subaru Forester, and then exited the King Road at approximately 3:58 a.m. McMichael did not mention seeing the white Elantra behind her at any time. Perhaps she did, but it appears that police did not believe her. Sorry, I don't... Subsequent investigation of video footage and cellular data showed the tan sedan McMichael saw was likely a light-colored SUV which left the area. Those who view the 1112 video for themselves will see that an unidentified SUV did arrive at 3:56:07, but that is almost certainly McMichael arriving in her gray Forester. She can be seen walking with a flashlight at 3:51:42 a.m., time-stamping her presence in front of the house. And we can see from the video that no other vehicle drives down King Road until 3:53:38 a.m. with a when a light-colored sedan leaves via King Road toward Taylor. At 3:56:24 a.m., a white sedan enters the neighborhood and passes King to Queen out of sight, only to return at 3:58:19. McMichael's Subaru is seen leaving the area at 4:38 a.m., 4 o'clock 38 seconds a.m., making it impossible that she saw an SUV. Why, one might ask, is this important? The single least debatable fact in this entire case is that a white four-door sedan traveled in and out of the neighborhood numerous times until 4:20:45 a.m., when it leaves at a high rate of speed and disappears southeast up Willenta. Bill Thompson made it a part of his evidentiary testimony at Kohberger's change of plea hearing. At approximately 4:20 that morning, he said, defendant's car is seen on surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways. Highway 95 that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. What no one has publicly discovered, however, is that there's another vehicle that presents compelling questions about who might have gone in and out of that house Sunday morning. Oddly enough, this mystery starts with Dylan Mortensen. She told police that she saw a dark truck passing the house just after the crimes. In order to place this vehicle in context, we need to return to her November 17, 2022 interview with ISP Detective Vicki Gooch and MSP Detective Dustin Blaker. Though we have covered the written summary of this discussion, ISP Supplemental 0003, the author has obtained the actual audio recording, which had not been released to the public at the time of this writing. This interview was conducted at Mortensen's residence in Boise with her lawyer, Robin McPherson, present via video feed from the Sullivan Law Offices in Moscow. Can you think of anything else right now? Gooch asks at the 1:26:28 mark. No. Oh, this is something else I can remember. Cars do come by a lot, but I remember looking out the window. I just remember, I think it was a black truck. I don't remember. I don't know for sure, but like that is normal for cars to go by, but I don't know if that could be something, just a car driving past our driveway. How could the cars drive past their driveway? Because they're like at the end. We can just park. What time was that at? Gooch asks. That was right when I went down to see Bethany, so I don't know exactly when that was. Was it moving? Was it in movement? It was moving. It wasn't stopped at all. It was moving, and like people drive by our driveway, like around this side, housing neighborhood a little bit. Okay, like we hear cars go by all the time. That's not weird, but when you were making your way to Bethany's room, that's not when it was when I got into Bethany's room. I don't know why I looked out the window, but I saw a car drive by, and I believe it was I shouldn't say I believe because I don't know for sure, but I think it was a black truck. But I don't know for sure. It could have been, it was just dark, and I just thought it was a black truck. As luck would have it, one can actually document her statement via the 1112 door cam recording at 4:23:49 a.m. A dark full-size SUV passes in front of the 1122 King Road with a distinctive audio signature caused by what appears to be very loud exhaust. Unlike the white sedan, this dark SUV turns right onto Taylor Road instead of left onto Willenta. We know this because the dumpster video, which clearly shows it passing eastbound on Taylor at 4:25:17. Things start to get interesting, however, when the dark SUV returns through King Road at 4:28:49 a.m. as documented by the 1112 camera. Review of the dumpster video verifies it returning along Taylor Road, meaning it left the neighborhood just 5 minutes after the white Elantra, then returned about 4 minutes later. What really stands out, however, is a third set of images captured by widely known footage referred to as the Linda Lane video. This is the same camera police relied upon to document travel of the white Elantra before and after the crimes. By the way, if you have not seen all these videos, they are saved in a playlist in my bio. It's Idaho 4 on YouTube. You can find Linda Lane, the whole, it's like 4 hours long. There's several there, so if you need to check this out, go there. Careful review of footage shows the boxy SUV parked nose in, facing the camera at 4:23:17 a.m. An unidentified subject carrying a backpack can be seen walking from the direction of 1122 King Road across the parking lot toward the truck. They appear to open the tailgate of the SUV, which triggers the interior dome light, then climb in through the driver's side door. Here's where things start to get weird. The SUV leaves its parking spot near Linda Lane, passes down Queen, turns right on Taylor, and returns by the same route approximately 4 minutes later. Instead of returning to its original parking space, however, it stops in front of 1122 King Road. We know this because the Linda Lane video shows that it did not return, and the distinctive sound of its exhaust is recorded by the door cam at 1112. Based on the recording and the SUV's distinctive exhaust, it seems clear that the vehicle stops in front of 1122, idles there for about 30 seconds, then shuts down its engine, and you can hear a door close. Although the 1112 camera did not provide visual evidence, a witness did. According to police, a neighbor named Nick Makowicz contacted them November 18th to report hearing the loud engine Sunday morning around 4:30. ISP Detective Hugh Powell documented the call in ISP Supplement 196, noting that Makowicz, I'm so sorry, lived at 1106 King Road. Powell wrote, after going to bed, he had been asleep for approximately an hour when he was awoken by a vehicle with loud exhaust speeding away down the street past his house. Makowicz said he did not actually see the vehicle, but a different neighbor did. On February 16, 2023, Detective Payne interviewed a man named Jeffrey Manning, and he wrote in his LCPA Supplemental 147, Manning started by stating he lived at 1868 Conestoga Drive in Moscow and had called in a tip early on in the investigation about seeing a vehicle drive by his house at approximately 4:25 to 4:30 a.m. on the morning of November 13, 2022. Manning told me he was out in front of his house at that time placing items into his recycling bin and trash bins. Manning told Payne that he could not describe the vehicle other than its headlights, teardrop-shaped taillights, and unusually loud exhaust. He believed it was an SUV, Payne reported. Manning also told me the vehicle was going faster than usual but did not seem to be driving erratically or dangerously. Manning told me it was quite unusual for anyone to be driving in the area at that time and said he had not seen many cars driving at that time since the morning of November 13th. It seems that the police were not the only ones aware of this SUV. Manning stated that he was contacted by someone from the Kootenai County Public Defender's Office, I always butcher that, I'm so sorry, who asked him about the dark SUV he caught on security camera, Payne wrote, adding that Manning did not have any surveillance footage to give them. Perhaps not, but fortunately the camera at Linda Lane did. At 6:23 a.m., the mysterious SUV returned to its original parking spot to the east of 1122 King Road near Linda Lane. It appears that the same person who entered the vehicle at 4:23 exits the driver's side door with a backpack and walks west back toward 1122 King Road. For the record, this is the dark SUV with the same distinctive exhaust that is documented leaving and returning approximately 4 minutes after the crimes by 3 witnesses and 3 separate cameras. This is the vehicle that left Linda Lane only to park for 2 hours in front of the crime scene and return to its original parking spot 2 hours later. The camera at 1112 King Road provides no indication that the vehicle started or moved during that time. For those wondering what might have happened inside the house in the 8 hours after the crimes, who might have cleaned up the common areas of the second floor, and where all of those blood-soaked materials might have gone, The dark SUV prompts compelling discussion. To this day, no one has identified the distinctive-looking vehicle with the easily identifiable exhaust. Why did someone walk out to it? Why did someone walk out to it at 4:30 in the morning, put something in the back, and drive away, only to return 4 minutes later and park in front of the house, only to repark in its original spot 2 hours later? Good question. They could. They just don't want to. As with so many unanswered questions, now that Kohberger has admitted to the crimes, no one seems to care. Exactly. He answered that. That's insane. And y'all, he definitely went and got rid of items and came back to help finish, you know. Retired FBI Special Agent Christopher Holland is a forensic criminologist engaged by the defense to evaluate certain aspects of the prosecution's case. Based on thousands of Brady disclosure files, he composed a behavioral evidence analysis seeking to establish and understand the role of victims' psychodynamics and their contextual vulnerability with relation to the crimes. Relevant portions of his 38-page report are here excerpted verbatim. This is what it looks like. If you guys want to like and share the live, feel free. You don't have to. Just... Okay. Idaho versus Brian C. Kohberger. Holland Felony Analysis, LLC. Medico-legal findings. Victim autopsies were completed on 11/16/2022 by Veena D. Singh, MD, MPH, Chief Medical Examiner for Spokane County, Washington. The following are extracts from the autopsy reports. Note, there was no evidence that any of the victims were sexually assaulted. Which is wild, in my opinion. Were they women that got them, you know? What? Why did you ask that? Am I sitting funny? Or the undercarriage of the car? Okay. Kaylee Concalves. Investigative reports indicate that this 21-year-old female was found deceased in her shared home at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. Post-mortem examination showed a well-developed adult female with stab and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck 24 plus times. Stab and incised wounds of the chest 11 and stab and incised wounds of the upper extremities 3. Associated injuries included punctures of the outer table of the skull, injuries to the teeth and tongue, perforations of the subclavian artery and vein, and hemorrhage into the chest cavities. Blunt force injuries included scalp laceration, bleeding around the brain, and nasal fracture, as well as scrapes on the nose and cheeks, bruising around the eyes, and pattern bruises extending across the lower face. Petechial hemorrhages were present in the eyes and mouth. I hope I said that right. Hang on, guys. My kids are being so loud. I'm so sorry. They're just kids, though. You know. Okay. I would just want to say trigger warning, because this seems like it's going to get rough. You're welcome. I have it on YouTube, and I don't know how is there any way for y'all to go back and watch the other lives? Or I'll mail you my book if you want me to. I don't know. Okay. Thank you so much to whoever's liking the live. I appreciate it so much. Oh gosh, you guys. Scalp laceration. Scrapes on the nose and cheeks, bruising around the eyes, and pattern bruises extending across the lower face. Petechial hemorrhages were present in the eyes and the mouth. There is no evidence of natural disease that would have caused or contributed to death. Post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.17 grams per 100 milliliters. The cause of death is multiple sharp force injuries, blunt force injuries of the head, and asphyxia injuries excuse me, were listed as significant contributors to death. Madison Mogan. Investigative reports indicate that this 21-year-old female was found deceased in her shared home at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. Post-mortem examination showed a well-developed adult female with stab and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck. 13. Stab wounds of the chest, 5, and incised wounds of the upper extremities, 10. Associated injuries included wounds of the lung and liver, as well as perforations of the subclavian vein, subclavian artery, and blood vessels of the chest wall. There was no evidence of natural disease that would have caused or contributed to death. Post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.282 grams per 100 milliliters. Wow. The cause of death is multiple sharp force injuries. Okay, Xana. Investigative reports indicate that this 20-year-old female was found deceased in her shared home of 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. Post-mortem examination showed a well-developed adult female with stab-incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck, 23, stab wounds of the chest, 7, and abdomen, 4, incised and puncture wounds of the back, 3, incised wounds of the upper extremities, 25, and incised wounds of the lower extremities, 5. Associated injuries included punctures of the outer table of the skull, perforations of the jugular vein, heart, lung, and pulmonary blood vessels, hemorrhage into the chest cavities, and wounds exposing the bones of the hand. Additional injuries included scrapes and bruises. Is it? Oh, happy heavenly birthday, Maddie. Kaylee, I'm so sorry. Maddie is May 25th. Kaylee is, what's today, June 6th? This was my daughter's original due date. Wow. Associated injuries included punctures of the outer table of the skull, perforations of the jugular vein, heart, lung, and pulmonary blood vessels, hemorrhage into the chest cavities, and wounds exposing the bones of the hand. Additional injuries included scrapes and bruises on the face, torso, and extremities. There was no evidence of natural disease that would have caused or contributed to death. Post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.229 and an amphetamine level of 12 ng/ml. The cause of death is multiple sharp force injuries. Ethan Chapin, investigative reports. This gets hard to read without crying. Investigative reports indicate that this 20-year-old male was found deceased in a shared home at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. Post-mortem examination showed a well-developed adult male with the stab and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck, 4, a stab wound of the upper chest, 1, incised wounds of the upper extremities, 6, and stab incised wounds of the lower extremities, 6. Associated injuries included perforations of the jugular vein, subclavian vein, and subclavian artery. There's no evidence of natural disease that would have caused or contributed to death. Post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.122 and an amphetamine level of 260 ng/ml, and that is a lot of amphetamine. The cause of death is multiple sharp force injuries. Okay. Victimology. Kaylee Concalves was a senior at the University of Idaho, 21 years of age. She was born in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and graduated from Lake City High School in 2019. She enrolled in the University of Idaho at Moscow, majoring in, in general studies at the School of Arts, Letters, and Social Sciences. She reportedly intended to be a school teacher. She had completed her studies and moved back to Coeur d'Alene, living with her parents. She returned to Moscow that weekend to attend the homecoming football game and begin preparations to move to Austin, where she planned to share an apartment with a female friend, Jordan, and an unidentified male she met online. The week prior to her murder, she purchased a Range Rover in conjunction with the anticipated move. Kaylee is described as unproblematic and peaceful and having it together. Kaylee was active on social media, and her posts garnered a significant number of responses, though there is no indication she sought to be a social influencer. Kaylee was best friends with Madison Mogen, whom she had known since they were in 6th grade. She had a boyfriend, Jack DeCour, whom she had known since high school. He was also in attendance at the University of Idaho. At the university, they shared ownership of a dog named Murphy. Their relationship had ended in the weeks preceding the murder. She reportedly had a relationship with a fraternity member at Delta Tau Delta, with whom she would occasionally hook up. In the weeks prior to the murders, Kaylee had reported to friends that she thought she was being stalked. During the evening and early morning hours of November 12th, 13th, 2022, Goncalves consumed drugs including Adderall and alcohol, which would inhibit the ability to think and react. She was a resident and with other individuals who had been drinking heavily, creating the potential for harm to occur. Persons who did not live at the residence had access to the combination to the cipher lock on the first floor, creating a risk of an intruder. At the time of her death, Goncalves' blood alcohol content was 0.107 g/100 milliliters. Based on potentially harmful environmental elements and behavioral factors impacting Goncalves' day-to-day life, she is assessed a medium lifestyle exposure. Based on actual vulnerability to harm, she is assessed as a medium situational exposure. Madison Mogen was a popular member of Pi Beta Phi sorority and the Big of Bethany Funk, who also lived at 1122 King Road and survived the attacks. Mogen moved into the King Road residence in 2021. Friends considered Mogen a strong and thoughtful person. She worked part-time at the Mad Greek, a Moscow restaurant where Xana Kernodle also worked. She was a marketing major and had begun using those skills in a media campaign for the restaurant and interned with an insurance company. During an interview with police, one friend described first meeting Mogen when she was walking around without any clothes. The friend said she got her clothes and walked Mogen back to the Pi Beta Phi, where she lived at the time. Mogen regularly posted photos of an influencer nature with her friends and sorority sisters at various college events, as well as posts with her boyfriend Jake Schreiger. One of her posts elicited a response from Peach Perfect Scouts, who appeared to be looking for online influencers and brand ambassadors recruiters. Mogen had an Instagram account with the username Maddie Mogen and display name Madison May Mogen. The account profile stated, "Backup OnlyFans, DM me for any information. My 18 plus content here, OnlyFans Maddie Mogen." Wow. Madison Mogen consumed alcohol and used drugs recreationally. Any use of illegal drugs requires interaction with someone who is potentially dangerous. Mogen had an account on OnlyFans, which could potentially draw attention to her. And the incident of another student finding her without clothes suggests she was inebriated or in public or high on drugs, either of which would increase her lifestyle exposure. Mogen's post-mortem toxicology showed a blood alcohol content of 0.282 g/100 milliliters. This is sufficient to cause impairment of speech and movement, and therefore could have affected her ability to react when she was attacked. At the time of her death, she was living in her own residence. Other persons were present who had been drinking heavily, creating the potential for harm to occur. Persons who did not live there had access to the combination to the cipher lock on the first floor, creating a risk of an intruder. Based on potentially harmful environmental elements and behavioral factors impacting Mogen's day-to-day life, she is assessed at a moderate lifestyle exposure. Based on actual vulnerability to harm, she is assessed as a moderate situational exposure. Xana Kernodle was born in Sandpoint, Idaho, and graduated from Post Falls High School. She was a state champion gymnast. Her parents had divorced. Her mother is in prison on drug-related charges. She enrolled at the University of Idaho in May 2022 as a marketing major. She enjoyed volleyball. She was a member of Pi Beta Phi, as was victim Madison Mogen and witness Dylan Morton. My God, I'm so sorry. Dylan Mortensen. However, she had to drop from the sorority due to inability to pay the $1,000 membership fees. She was a server at the Mag Greek where Mogan worked. She was very popular among their peers. With a cheerful, outgoing personality, she had been dating victim Ethan Chapin for about 6 months. According to police reports, he was alleged to use cocaine on occasion. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I can't talk. Xana Kernodle's post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.229 and an amphetamine level of 12 ng/ml. This is sufficient to cause impairment of speech and movement and therefore could have affected her ability to react when she was attacked. At the time of her death, she was living in her own residence where other persons had been drinking, some had been using drugs. Based on potentially harmful environmental elements and behavioral factors impacting Kernodle's day-to-day life, she is assessed a moderate lifestyle exposure based on actual vulnerability to harm. She is assessed a moderate situational exposure. Ethan Chapin was the eldest of triplets, one brother, one sister, born in Conway, Washington, and graduated from Mount Vernon High School, Skagit County, Washington. He was in his sophomore year at the University of Idaho, 20 years of age when he was murdered. He was an avid swimmer and surfer and 6'4" in height and 228 pounds. Chapin was a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity but could not live in the residence due to his poor grades. He had been dating Xana for about 6 months. His Facebook page had an open list of 140 friends with few posts from 2021. He was athletic, calm by nature, according to police reports. He consumed alcohol and was a recreational drug user. At the time of death, Chapin was at the residence of Xana Kernodle, where other persons had been drinking heavily and some had been using drugs, creating the potential for harm to occur. Persons who did not live at the residence had access to the combination of the cipher lock on the first floor, creating a risk of an intruder. His post-mortem toxicology testing showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.122 g/100 milliliters and an amphetamine level of 260 ng/ml, sufficient to cause impairment of speech and movement. Based on potentially harmful environmental elements and behavioral factors impacting Chapin's day-to-day life, he is assessed a moderate lifestyle exposure. Based on actual vulnerability to harm, he assessed a moderate situational exposure. Kaylee Concalves was found dead in a full-sized bed. Possible evidence of 2 offenders. 1. Kaylee Concalves was found dead in a full-sized bed directly adjacent to Madison Mogan. Autopsy reports show that she suffered 3 defensive wounds to upper extremities, indicating that she was surprised and overwhelmed by her attacker. Cast-off blood on the walls of the bedroom where she died indicates her attacker climbed onto the bed and slashed at her from right to left. Wounds she sustained to the top of her skull are consistent with an assailant mounting her upper body and striking downward. So, on top of her, going down. While choking, beating, and stabbing Concalves, it would have been extremely difficult for a single offender to simultaneously control Mogan and prevent her from fleeing the open side of the bed. The mechanism, brutality, and chronology of these 2 murders strongly indicate the presence of 2 or more offenders. 2. Ethan Chapin's undiluted blood was found at the top of the stairway leading from the 2nd floor to the 1st. According to the state's own experts, there is no evidence that Ethan Chapin left his bed after being attacked. According to statements by surviving witness Dylan Mortensen, the man in the black balaclava made his escape, moving directly from Xana Kernodle's bedroom to the sliding door in the kitchen, and never went near the stairway. If Mortensen is correct, the man she saw could not have transferred blood to that location. The presence of Chapin's blood on the stairwell necessitates transfer from a second offender. So, basically, the offender had Ethan's blood on him still. Not that Ethan put his blood there, but the offender put his blood there. 3. Xana Kernodle sustained 64 wounds, while Ethan sustained 11. Wounds to Chapin's lower extremities are evidence that he awoke after being attacked and he reacted to the assault by pulling his legs up into a defensive posture. The absence of blood on white socks he was wearing at the time of death proves that he was attacked in bed and never rose to assist Xana Kernodle as she was fighting for her life on the floor beside him. Based on the nature and extent of wounds inflicted upon Chapin, it is impossible to believe that he slept through the attack on Kernodle, and it is illogical that Kernodle stood in her bedroom and waited for the offender to kill Chapin before killing her. The only possible explanation is that the two were attacked and killed simultaneously by more than one assailant. 4. When let out of the house at 2:30 a.m., Murphy, the dog, ran away, as evidenced by Bethany Funk's statements to police. Braden Paulo, residing in 1127 King Road, stated that Murphy was the only dog in the neighborhood, and Paulo awoke sometime after 4 a.m. to the sound of Murphy barking. The barking continued to almost 5 a.m. when it stopped abruptly, as if he had been let inside. As of 4:30 a.m., Funk and Mortensen were the only persons known to be in the residence, and according to statements by both women, they never left Funk's first-floor bedroom until approximately 11:54 a.m. The only explanation is that a second offender was still in the residence at 5 a.m. and that the offender opened a door, allowing Murphy back into the house. I believe there were only 2 people in there and that Dylan let the dog back in. Or there were possibly many people in there cleaning up. Who knows? I don't know. I wasn't there. The floor in Xana's bedroom was covered with blood, which should have resulted in bloody footprints in the hallway outside. The lack of footprints in the hallway indicates that the floor was cleaned sometime between 4:15 a.m. when the murders occurred and noon when police arrived. Police reports document cast off blood in the common areas of the second floor, which had been diluted with an unknown substance, indicating efforts to clean up after the murders. In statements to police, Mortensen said she observed a masked man in black clothes walking from the direction of Xana Kernodle's bedroom through the kitchen as he exited the house. If this offender left immediately after killing Chapin and Kernodle, a second offender had to have stayed to alter the scene. At 10 a.m., the front door of the residence was observed open by a witness walking his dog. Due to its location at the bottom of the stairs, Mortensen would have noticed the door being open when she relocated to Funk's bedroom at 4:30 a.m., right? Had the door stayed open all night, the first floor would have been cold, but neither Funk nor Mortensen made that observation. Someone else in the house must have opened or closed the door. Or they're lying. Kaylee Goncalves, method of attack. Kaylee Goncalves was killed in a blitz attack, that is. The offenders suddenly and viciously attacked her in her sleep with overwhelming force. Goncalves' cast-off blood was found on the ceiling above the bed and on the walls, and this indicates great force used in the attack. Goncalves received 38 sharp-edged wounds, with only 3 being defensive wounds, reflecting complete surprise and an inability to fight back. She sustained blunt force trauma to her face, resulting in fractures, and she was strangled to the point of petechiae, which requires a significant amount of time to induce. Madison Mogan was also assaulted in a blitz attack in which she sustained 28 sharp-edged wounds, with 10 being defensive wounds to upper extremities. Cast-off blood on the far walls of the room and the ceiling indicated that great force was used in the attack. Xana Kernodle suffered a surprise attack where neither the victim nor the offender was aware of the other's presence until just before the encounter. Xana Kernodle suffered a surprise attack where neither the victim nor the offender was aware of the other's presence until just before the encounter. Ethan Chapin was murdered in a blitz attack in which the offender suddenly and viciously overwhelmed him with sharp-edged weapons. He received 11 significant wounds, including the fatal blow to his throat. Evidence of planning. These attacks were not spontaneous. The offenders had to select, surveil, and prepare for the attacks. The planning was not extensive, however, based on errors made in altering the crime scene and handling of the dog. Evidence indicates that the offenders were either unaware Ethan and Xana were home or anticipated that they were asleep and did not expect to encounter them when they moved to the 3rd floor. At least one offender was dressed in black and wearing a balaclava to conceal their identity. The offenders had knowledge of the house. Offender traits and characteristics. Signature behaviors are acts committed by an offender that exceed what would normally be expected during the crime. These excessive actions suggest a psychological or emotional need that is unique to the assailant at the time of the offense. Both Goncalves and Mogan received identical post-mortem wounds to the throat and left shoulder. These post-mortem wounds represent a compulsion by the offenders to disfigure the victims. They indicate an excessively violent behavior associated with rage. Based on these characteristics, we can conclude the following. Kaylee was the primary target of these attacks. She had completed her coursework and moved from 1122 King Road to her parents' home in Coeur d'Alene. She returned to the U of I that weekend for the express purpose of attending the homecoming football game and selling furniture she had in her room in preparation for her move to Austin, Texas. The weekend of 11/12/13/2022 would have presented the killers with one last opportunity to kill Kaylee Goncalves. They bypassed persons on the second floor and went directly to the third floor, seeking Goncalves. Goncalves sustained strangulation and blunt force trauma, resulting in facial fractures, 38 wounds inflicted by sharp-edged weapons. Goncalves was strangled, as evidenced by the presence of petechiae hemorrhage. There is no evidence of ligature use, indicating she was strangled by hand. The most personal of all homicidal methods. That is very personal. I think there are too. But when someone uses their hand to strangle you, that's very personal. Like, they want to make sure, you know. Injuries inflicted on Goncalves represent overkill in excess of what was necessary to cause her death. One or both offenders had a deep personal anger against Goncalves. The attack was directed primarily at her face, which was severely disfigured in an effort to destroy her identity. This indicates the offender had a personal and deeply hateful relationship with this intended target. Madison Mogan sustained 28 injuries from a sharp-edged weapon and was an intended, though secondary, target. The killer's aggression toward Mogan would be described as retaliatory anger, but to a lesser extent than Goncalves, as she sustained far fewer injuries. The act of staging Goncalves' head on Mogan's shoulder, the identical nature of wounds inflicted post-mortem on both victims, and the fact that the killers tucked them in beneath the comforter indicate that they were aware of and resented the close relationship between Goncalves and Mogan. As Mogan's injuries were less severe than Goncalves, the anger toward Mogan was possibly due to her relationship with or a trait she shared with Goncalves, and not specifically because of something Mogan had done. Xana was murdered to protect the identity of the offenders. Had she been sleeping in her bedroom, it is unlikely she would have been killed. Ethan was murdered to protect the identity of the offenders. Had he not wakened, it is unlikely he would have been killed. If the first two pillars of Bill Thompson's case are DNA in the white sedan, the third and final pillar is the FBI cast analysis tying Brian Kohberger's cell phone to the scene. To be precise, no law enforcement document ever places Kohberger's phone anywhere near the scene of the crime between the hours of 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. Oh no. So sorry. If the state is correct in asserting that all four murders occurred in the moments before surveillance cameras at 1112 King Road recorded what sounds like a woman, Xana, screaming. How do they know it's Xana? Screaming in a white sedan speeding away, could not have tied it to Kohberger's phone because it was off. What we know about the prosecution's evidence in lieu of trial begins with what the Latah County prosecuting attorney told us at the change of plea hearing. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. Thompson states, and the evidence will show that the phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. Using the term likely might seem conspicuously in a death penalty prosecution, but those were his words. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. At about 5:26 a.m. Starting approximately 5:26 a.m., various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. According to the reports, the FBI cast team prepared for trial. The words "towards Pullman" mean absolutely nothing. Cell tower analysis shows that it was impossible to track Kohberger's phone to less than a 10-mile radius. Yes, he could have been traveling toward Pullman or anywhere else north of Nevada, but there's more. Based on Brett Payne's December 20th arrest warrant affidavit, we know all about what prosecutors believed at the time. We will recall that police referred to Kohberger's AT&T cell by the last four digits in his number. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cell tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 and 5 a.m., Payne wrote. While many would conclude that this was due to the phone not being anywhere near that location, recall that Payne extrapolated based on his experience that individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. Based on cast analysis and data obtained from a December 23, 2022 police report, it was determined that Kohberger's cell utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south to Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. They claim that between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., his phone traveled south on 95 to Genesee, then west toward Uniontown, then north back to Pullman. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, Payne wrote, consistent with the phone traveling back to the Kohberger residence. Though all this makes sense on its surface, Payne did not mention the FBI's specific analysis or the fact that the only way to verify cell tower pings was to match them with what they claimed to be their suspects, white Hyundai Elantra. Yeah, baby?
I thought you weren't reading.
I am.
Can I put myself some apples?
Yeah. The way to verify cell tower pings was to match them with what they claimed to be their suspect's white Hyundai Elantra. Bizarrely, Payne noted in his affidavit that FBI analysis did show Kohberger's phone connecting to a cell phone tower near providing service to Moscow on November 14th, 2022, but for some reason did not believe that the phone was in Moscow on that date. This is so weird to me. No explanation was offered regarding this obviously troublesome fact. On July 8, 2024, the FBI provided Bill Thompson's office with a colorful and animated 31-page historical mobile device location analysis completed by Special Agent Nicholas Balance. Page 1 of this cellular analysis cast report states the MPD requested assistance with 3 target cell phones, which need not be printed here, though they are obviously tied to the murders. One, of course, is Kohberger's, and for reasons not yet explained, the other 2 belong to victims. The report offers basic information about methodology, which amounts to matching a phone with the tower it pings, and notes that locations are denoted in latitude and longitude using mapping software. That is not further described. Okay, I'm going to finish these next 2 pages, and then my throat's killing me, guys. Page 2 of the report shows a map graphic depicting tower locations in the area surrounding Moscow, photographic depictions of sample towers, including a simulated evergreen tree, a flagpole, and a cactus. Page 9 of the report lists locations of interest, as the crime scene at 1122 King Road and Kohberger's apartment at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, Apartment G, 201 in Pullman. The following page maps 2 AT&T network towers in Moscow, 7 in Pullman, and 2 along Route 270. The primary route connecting the 2 towns, the report lists Kohberger's phone information with a 509 prefix, a billing address in Pennsylvania, and an activation date of June 23rd. From there, the cast report uses maps, legends, and graphic representations to track Koberger's phone based on when and where it pinged on the closest adjacent towers. Although Bill Thompson made bold claims about what these analyses showed, a thorough review of the CAS report leads to very different conclusions. Since this document is animated with highlights, diagrams, and graphics full of information, it appears obvious that it was built for courtroom presentation specifically to bolster expert testimony. 509-8458 had no network interactions on November 13th, 2002 between 2:45 a.m. and 4:48 a.m., page 14 proclaims. This we already knew. After 4:48, the CAST report shows tower connection south of Moscow, as the prosecution has alleged. Based on a legend at the bottom of the page graphic, it appears that Koberger's car could have been as far away as 25 miles from the crime scene at that time. Between 5:20 and 5:27 a.m., it appeared to have pinged towers south and east of Koberger's apartment in Pullman. Between 6:13 and 8:03 a.m., he placed 3 calls to 2 different family members, received a 4th call from one of them, and received 1 text. Notably, one of the calls lasted more than 36 minutes, while a second lasted almost 55. All 5 of the communications pinged a tower within 2,000 feet, according to the report. At 9 a.m. and 9:03 a.m., Koberger's phone pinged a tower south of his residence from 2 different directions, implying travel, and 9 minutes later interacted with a tower in Moscow. And from there, the CAS charts showed Koberger's phone pinging towers over a broad stretch of Latah and adjoining counties, as far as Sweetwater, which is almost 50 miles south. While one could certainly see how Bill Thompson's office used these charts to link Koberger to the crime scenes, it is just as easy to use the same graphs to argue that microwave geometry makes it impossible to pinpoint locations within a range of more than 10 miles. For reasons that are not immediately obvious, the CAST presentation tracks certain cell communications for Maddie Mogan. A chart on page 27 shows her phone receiving incoming calls at 4:19, 4:21, and 4:28. Clearly, though, these document calls Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk say they made shortly after the murders, but there is no information in the report to indicate origin, type of transmission, or length or connection. I'm almost done, buddy. The last 2 pages of the CAS report document Koberger's phone pinging a tower providing coverage to within 100 meters of 1122 King Road 23 times between July 9th and 2022 and November 7th. And the report notes that all 23 connections occurred between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., implying perhaps that Koberger cased the house late at night. What they do not state is that none of the residents had even moved into the house at that point, and that while the tower in question could have tied a user to within 100 meters of the crime scene, it could not, in fact, prove that they were closer than 10 miles. As for the science and methodology behind cell tower analysis, Ann Taylor had hired an expert named Cy Ray, according to an April 2024 defense filing. The former police officer and founder of ZX Corporation planned to refute the FBI CAS analysis based on missing information and incomplete data. Koberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, Taylor's office wrote, seeking discovery of additional information from police. Brian Koberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman highway in the early morning hours of November 13th, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on the video along the Moscow-Pullman highway near Floyd's cannabis shop. Cy Ray actually testified to misgivings during a pretrial hearing. Because of piecemealing of the data, because of the missing data, because of the data I'm reviewing that is incredibly inaccurate, everything that is missing is absolutely in benefit of the defense right now, he said. There are other reports that are missing that I can't tell you are benefiting Mr. Koberger or the state. Although Ray has remained outspoken about what he perceives to be flaws in the FBI's methodology and conclusions, there will be no trial and he will not get the chance. Okay, I have to stop. I am so sorry. My throat hurts. Thank you guys so much for being here and for listening. I'll be back. Probably not today, but we only have 1 chapter left. And I do have things written down in here that I wanted to talk about. Like Gary Jenkins. He changed his phone number on November 13th. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I can't. If I keep going, I'm going to lose my voice. I thought that said Brian at first. Thank you guys so much for being here. That was chapter, oh my gosh. The end of chapter 13, and we also read 14. So, yeah, we're almost done. I'm going to go. I need to go run an errand, actually. So, thank you guys so much for being here. I love y'all, and just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've helped me reach so many goals just by watching. And thank you for, if you laugh at me, I don't even see it. So thank you. Thank you for possibly not laughing at me for my terrible reading skills. Oh. This is so sad. This is just so sad, you guys. You're welcome. I'm sorry I'm not the best reader. Okay, I have a child over here. Love you guys. Thank you. Like I said, you're awesome. Thank you. I will try to give you guys a better, like, heads up when I'm going to do this again, because we only have one more chapter, and I'm so ready to just talk about the book, you know? So I have to go take care of some things, but you guys are awesome. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Drink your water. Get outside. Take your vitamins. Take care of yourself. It's important. And thank you so much for liking the live, sharing the live, the gifts. Y'all are awesome. You're so helpful with me. I truly appreciate it, and I hate to leave 45 of you, but I'm going to. I love y'all, and peace out.